Hi, everybody. My name is Tony Marcolini. Welcome to the podcast. It may interest you to know, and I can hardly contain myself because Lee Goldberg is back. One of my absolute favorite authors, for certain. I think I'm at a point now where I read pretty much everything he writes. But today, where he's back to talk about a particular book. He was on, I think the last time he was on, as a matter of fact, or maybe the time before that, we talked about Malibu Burning, which was his first creation in this particular series. And now we have a sequel to talk about. So welcome, Lee.
Thank you very much. It's actually the third book in the series.
Is it
There
the
was another
third?
sequel called
No,
Ashes Never Lie that came out about, what, 6 months, a year ago?
I don't even remember the third book, the second book.
Ah, well, you have to rush out and get it and read it by tomorrow.
Maybe I missed it. I thought this was the second one after
No,
Malibu.
this is the third, and it's the second crossover with the Eve Ronin series. There's Malibu Burning, and then Ashes Never Lie, which was a Eve Ronin crossover, and now Hidden in Smoke, which is also an Eve Ronin crossover. And then in September, so I just got these. Where is it? I can show it to you. I just got The Galleys for Fallen Star, the sixth Eve Ronin novel, and that's a crossover with Sharpe Walker, who are in Hidden in Smoke.
Wow, you're shaming me.
I'm not
I,
shaming
I've
you.
I've I've fallen down on the job. You got one past me. I am I am gonna run out and get the second book. Now, before we get into the sequel, I'm gonna say if you haven't read Malibu Burning, this is not the podcast episode you should be watching. You should go back and watch Malibu Burning and then come back. Because because I never give spoilers, but I mean I feel compelled in this one just to talk about this little part of it. So I'm gonna spoil a little bit on you on Malibu Burning.
I
I
have the same warning on page one of my book. I say, if you haven't read Malibu Burning, I'm going to ruin it for you on page one of this book. Chapter one, page one gives away everything. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy Hidden in Smoke by itself, but you'll like it a little bit more if you've read Malibu Burning. You can still read Hidden in Smoke first, then go back and read Malibu Burning. But this one pretty much spoils the whole ending of that book.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna say this. My favorite character in the book in the Malibu Burning was Danny,
Uh huh.
right? And I think I may be alone, right? Most
No, you're
people.
not. Because when I did the first sequel to Malibu Burning, Ashes Never Lie, I got a lot of emails, and so did my publisher, saying, "We want Danny Cole. Where's Danny Cole? We love Sharpe Walker, but what happened to Danny Cole?" So my publisher pretty much demanded that the third Sharpe Walker had to be both a police procedural and we had to bring Danny Cole back. And I was thinking, God, how do I do that? And that's how Hidden in Smoke came about.
Brilliantly, right? So you find a way to weave Danny back into this, and it's really brilliantly done. But I have to admit, he was my favorite character. I was so happy to see him, and the same. He's just the same, right? There's something about him. He's very, I don't know. He's like charming and funny, and I love a good and I love a good con, right?
Yes.
Those books are the best.
Well, that's why I did Malibu Burning, because it had been years since I'd written a heist novel. You know, I did five con man heist novels with Janet Evanovich, and
That's where I
my
first stumbled upon you. I
ah,
love those books.
and my Ian Ludlow books, true fiction, killer thriller, and fake truth, were also kind of heist, international thriller, con man books. And I've been doing pretty much police procedurals ever since, and I'm just kind of itching to get back to it. So I married the two because now I'm at a point in my career where readers expect, for better or worse, police procedurals from me. So that's what I did in Malibu Burning. I itched that heist, big robbery story that I wanted to do with con man and all that, and married it to a police procedural. In Ashes Never Lie, it's straightforward police procedural. For this one, again, I kind of mimicked the construction of Malibu Burning and had two storylines going at once that eventually converge, one with the two arson investigators and one with Danny Cole. But the difference this time is that the two arson investigators are not looking into a fire started by Danny Cole. They're working on something else, and I don't want to give that away, but it all oh yeah, I'll tell you what they're working on, but I don't want to give away how they all converge.
No, nor should you.
Excuse
I mean, it lays out so
me,
well.
I'm gonna steal some vodka. Hold on a sec. Sorry, it's
It
Diet
really
Coke.
lays out. It lays out so well. I mean, I enjoyed it. I love a good heist. I loved your books with Janet Evanovich. That's how I first stumbled upon you. Um, and I will say that I they lacked when you left, right? The last two books I think are written without you. And the characters are completely different, right? So I wanted that back from you because you're so good at it, right? Because
Thank
it's
you.
done in a very just juicy, delicious way, like that you can't wait to get to the next page. And I find that Danny has that quality, right? He has the quality that you created with the original Janet Evanovich books,
Hmm?
that really great con man, the likable con man. That's what's hard to do. I think it's really hard to create a likable con man. Because most people, whatever you're taking money or belongings, thieves are not that popular as a rule. But you just create these charming thieves that you love. I mean, they all seem to have
That's
purpose.
good.
They only steal from really bad people, it seems. And, it's a very
Well, I was a big
Robin kind
fan
of thing.
when I was growing up of Simon Templar, the Saint, and Brett Maverick, and the Thomas Crown Affair, and It Takes a Thief, and I really enjoy those kind of shows and books, and you don't see many of them anymore. I mean, there's Leverage, which is a con every week on television. But other than that, you don't really see it much in books, and it's nice to get back to now and then. And it's a chance for me to escape too. I enjoy the international locales. In Hidden in Smoke, there's a fictional, I guess you can call it museum that I created called the Gallery of Curiosities on a
Yeah.
fictional island in Japan. And that island doesn't exist, but that group of islands does. I went there for research. And while the Gallery of Curiosities doesn't exist, it's inspired on a real museum that I did go and visit down in Tasmania called the Museum of Old and New Art, the Mona. And it's inside this mountain and it's bizarre. And it made a big impression on me. And so I kind of married the two. I took the absolutely insane museum that's now the number one tourist attraction in Tasmania, and I just basically plunked it in an island in Japan.
Does
Um,
this have as weird stuff as the one in the book?
oh boy, they have a machine there that eats the food that's served in the museum restaurant, digests it, and then shits it out. It also passes gas. They have an entire corridor of plaster cast vaginas. They have all kind. There's a guy who's completely tattooed, who's willed his skin to the guy who runs the museum, owns the museum. I mean, there's some really interesting art. There's some really offensive art. There's just it's so strange and in your face and aggressive, and it's inside this I can't even call it a building, this structure that's straight out of a James Bond movie. You keep expecting Blofeld to come out and going, "Welcome, Mr. Bond. I'm so glad that you came to join us." Well, now I sound like Bela Lugosi, but you know what I mean. It was just so it had a big impact on me, and so I did my own version of it. So if anyone thinks my gallery of curiosities in Hidden in Smoke is over the top, just look up the Mona and you'll see it's a mild version of the real thing. And as far as the island in Japan, those islands really exist. And I'm going to mispronounce this, Ryokan, that I went to in Japan that I based the one in the book on. I'm a big believer in actually going to the places I write about when I can.
Yeah, I mean, I do know that about you. I know you do a lot of research for all your books before you start
Well, to
putting
give
them.
you an idea, I'm working on a new book now it's called Edison Bixby. It's coming out next summer. This is just one of the binders of research for the book that I'm
Wow.
referring to. This is one. I have several, but I'm using this binder right now for what I'm writing today. And I try to do the research and have it and absorb it so it comes through when I'm writing, but every now and then I have to dig up the actual facts and weed them in, filter them in. I had to do that with Hidden in Smoke because I don't know a thing about arson investigation. I mean, there's a whole science behind it. So I've got so many books on arson investigation and textbooks and manuals and people I can call. But then I have to find a way to make it seem casual and easy and understandable in my books.
Well, you do. See, that's the thing. I mean, you definitely put a lot of research into all your books. And it feels real because of it. I mean, and you also find the obscure, which I like a lot. Like you just said, I didn't just make up this, really bizarre museum. Like there is a really bizarre museum, albeit maybe not identical to this, but you can go someplace and be freaked out for your viewing pleasure.
Right. I
And
mean, I added some things like in my gallery of curiosities, there was a bridge, glass bridge
yeah.
that starts to crack. That's not at the Mona, but if you go online, you can see the actual bridge that does that. It's along this cliff. And I don't know who designed it or why and what weird throws it gets out of terrifying people and dogs but it's I saw that and I married that to my story too. I mean, I create fictional places and I set them in the real world. And but I sometimes I get accused of being over the top. So I want people to know, no, I'm not. I mean, in the book I'm writing now, my protagonist lives in a house that people are going to say, oh God, Lee's on crack. Nobody can have a home like that. Well, no, it's based on a home I actually visited. That a friend of mine's brother-in-law built in the Malibu Mountains, Malibu Hills, that sadly burned down. But I get a lot of inspiration from reality, and then I make it fictional. I spin it my own way.
See, that's what I'm saying. I like that you find the obscure in the real world, right? And then you put it through, into your story in a way that I guess for some people it feels over the top. It never does for me. I find it part of the entertainment value.
Well, not everything's obscure. I mean, the centerpiece of Hidden in Smoke is a overpass fire in Los Angeles that creates Carmageddon. Well, that actually happened here. There was an overpass fire that shut down the I-10 freeway for a couple weeks, and it was devastating here. And I used that real event in my upcoming book, Fallen Star. I live in Calabasas on a ridge, and Kobe Bryant's helicopter crashed just below the ridge of my house here. So I used that as an inspiration. I actually interviewed the NTSB team that investigated that helicopter crash, and I used it in the upcoming Eve Ronin novel. So sometimes I take very real events, like I know we're not talking about Eve Ronin, but in Eve Ronin novels, I talk about these sheriff department gangs and their tattoos. And when I first wrote about it, people said, "Oh, that's ridiculous." Well, it became a gigantic scandal here in Los Angeles that soon everybody in the country knew about it. And even in Malibu Burning, I wrote about convict firefighters, which nobody knew about. But now there's a TV series called Fire Country that's all about convict firefighters. So I like to be a little bit ahead of the curve when I tell some of my stories.
Well,
But
I
mostly
think
I
you're
just
just shedding a light on stuff that probably exists, and no one's talking about, right? But you shed a light on things. So I like that a lot always about your books. I find your plots to be interesting in a very intelligent sort of a way, which is not that easy to find, right? I'll preface it, and I'm not looking to be insulting, but there are a lot of people in your genre, right, who I think thread together uh, poor plots or less intelligent plots, right, that are much harder to be interested in or follow. Or I mean, you write intelligently, right? It's witty dialogue. It's a great plot. I think that's part of the draw for your books. I think that's why so many people come back over and over again. You're reading it, you can't wait to get to the next page. It's borderline unpredictable in a lot of ways. The big picture is, of course, your protagonists are going to have to win. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, the series is going to end. If you kill Eve Ronin in the next book, well, the whole series goes down. So, I mean, I guess we all go into it knowing they're going to accomplish something great. Uh, but I feel like you don't
But
have
at a
to.
price. I try to. I mean, one of the running gags, I guess, in the Eve Ronin novels is she keeps ending up in the ER. I mean, she keeps getting hurt. Unlike other TV shows and books where the characters are hurt and then the next book they're fine. I mean, she carries these scars around. She's still limping and dealing with the injuries from previous books. I want to show that she pays a price. And I'm getting way ahead of myself, but in the book that comes out in October, Fallen Star, mistakes she made in the previous 5 books, and even in some of these Sharpe and Walkers, come back to haunt her. And she discovers how hard it is to be a perfect person, a perfect cop, a someone who has no corruption in their history, intentionally or otherwise. And that's the fun of it for me. I don't want my characters to come out of each encounter just fine. I mean, yes, they live, but I mean, you missed Ashes Never Lie, the second Sharpe and Walker, but there are references in Hidden in Smoke to experiences that Eve Ronin and Walt and Andrew Walker had in the previous book, and
Yeah, I wondered about that. Isn't that weird? I was like, oh, I guess you're supposed to assume that these things happen. Like I didn't.
yeah, he keeps talking about apologizing for the Wonder Woman outfit that she was in, and she keeps
Yeah, I
getting
was like,
mad
I
at him
guess
for
it's
her.
some inside joke that he's
No,
writing.
no, keeps getting mad at him for her deviated septum and all that. It was from the previous book, how the last book ended. And she resents him for what happened at the end of the last book, and he's having fun with it. So I have that. I mean, I have some strands that may confuse you if you haven't read the previous books, but she carries her scars with her, and she changes with each book, and to some degree, I'm inspired by my friend Michael Connelly's Harry Bosch. I mean, Bosch has evolved a lot from Black Echo. And even if you look at John Sanford's Lucas Davenport's life and career have changed dramatically over whatever it's been, 35 books. As opposed to, I mean, no offense whatsoever to my good friend Janet, Stephanie Plum has essentially stayed the same.
Oh yeah, Stephanie's tried and
Spenser,
true
Robert
though.
P.
I mean,
Parker Spenser doesn't change. Nero Wolfe doesn't change.
although I
There's
will say she married her, right? She
right.
married her in the last book.
But for the most part, if you read Spenser, it's going to be always the same. If you read Nero Wolfe, it's always the same. But Harry Bosch is a very different character with a different life in the current book than he was in Black Echo. And Eve Ronin is definitely changing, and the world around her is changing. And there's a TV show about her. And Sharpe and Walker are changing. Their relationship changes based on the things that happen in these books. I want them all to stand alone, but I also want the characters to grow, or I'm going to be bored out of my mind. I don't. In television, we have this saying, the same show every week, only different. And so it starts, and you have the mystery, and terrible things happen, and everything gets resolved, and you're back to status quo by the end. And, I did 100 episodes of Diagnosis Murder, and after that, it's like I was bored. I mean, you can't really change the characters' lives that much. You can't really put much at risk. So books give me a little more of that freedom.
I think, the deal though is there's an avenue for everything. There's a lane for everything, right? When I go to Stephanie Plum, sort of want her to be the same,
Right.
right? Like I'm looking for a deeply comfort read. I'm looking for Stephanie to be Stephanie and have some laughs with her and share, a few hours. Um, that's different than what I expect when I open up one of your books,
Hmm.
right? I'm not looking for that. I want to be challenged. When I read one of your books, I want to really ingrain myself in the plot, right? I love that about your plots. They're very like detailed and gritty, and I like that, and that's why I read you. I mean, I think everybody has their lane. You're looking for something in particular when you pick your writers. Now, I like that your characters do evolve because I didn't realize there was a second one, but I thought Sharpe and Walker had changed from the first time I had seen them. And I'm not going to give away another plot, thing which I've already done, but I think one of them in particular deviated a lot from how you know him to be.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not going to say any more than that, but so life changed him, right? His family changed him, but I think that's nice. Like it's nice to see people evolve. It's nice to see people change and improve. I like
Well,
the savvy aspect.
in Ashes Never Lie, Sharpe and Walker meet Eve Ronin for the first time on on a difficult case, and the case does not go well. Something terrible happens, and Walker shrugs it off more than Eve does. And there's some references to that in Hidden in Smoke, where he's cavalier about something, and she's saying, last time you were cavalier about something like that, someone died. And so it's for me, it's interesting to portray the different attitudes that all these characters have towards the job that they do. For Sharpe, it's entirely an intellectual game. For him, it's all about the science, for figuring out the fire. He's all into the puzzle, and he's extremely confident, and he doesn't care about all the people he offends. Walker is in it for the adrenaline rush. He gave up a much more dangerous job for his wife and kid. They made him do it, which is why he became an arson investigator. He thought he'd be doing virtually nothing, and he's thrilled when he actually gets a chance to risk his life and do something daring, and maybe becomes too daring and takes too many risks. And Eve Ronin falls somewhere in the middle. She's very smart. She thinks she knows it, but she makes terrible mistakes, and her overconfidence gets into trouble. And she knows the damage that can be caused by her relentless pursuit of the truth. And she's with somebody in Duncan Pavone who's much more relaxed, who realizes his family
Who
life
doesn't change. He loves
does not
food.
change.
He does not change. He's status quo.
He doesn't change, but that's how he survives. He
Right.
doesn't get mixed up in the politics. He doesn't bring the job home. He self-medicates with food. He doesn't let the job get to him, and he realizes that each case has its own momentum. You don't need to push it along. As he mentions in one of the Eve Ronin novels, this case would have solved itself exactly the same way if you took some time off to have dinner, if you slept full nights, if you went ahead and enjoyed your weekends, everything would have resolved the same way. You don't need to push so hard. And for me, it's fun to get the four of them in a room and see their different approaches to solving a case and how they complement and hinder each other and mirror each other in some ways. For me, I need that conflict. It brings out the drama, and it also brings out the humor, and it engages me. And I guess people could look at my books and accuse me of repeating myself. But even in the books I did with Janet, I had this lovable con man and this relentless FBI agent who didn't understand what he was doing at all. But she also had a family that was really vexing her, and it was nice to contrast those two different ways of life: someone who was carefree and didn't have the family, and someone who wasn't carefree and had the family. And
I'm trying to think of their names. What were those characters' names?
Nick Fox and Kate O'Hare.
Nick Fox, Nick and Kate. That's right. Great
Fox
books.
and O'Hare.
Great books.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That's I was wondering as I'm reading. I'm like, any chance of giving Danny his own series?
Well, I don't want to reveal anything, but if you look at the way Hidden in Smoke ends, it's quite possible Danny Cole can come back. But I have to confess that the book I'm writing now is neither an Eve Ronin nor a Sharpe Walker. It's a standalone, and we'll see what happens with that. That might be a third series. I didn't intend Malibu Burning to be a series. Malibu Burning did so well. It was such a huge success that my publisher said, "Oh, we got to bring these guys back." So I did. And Lost Hills, the first Eve Ronin novel, again, was not meant to be a series. I just had this idea for a police procedural, and it was such a big success that they said, we got to see more Eve. And that's a good thing. I kind of like writing books that I don't intend to be the pilot for a book series, and they naturally become one because of reader enthusiasm.
Well, I mean, these are books that I think your characters are so interesting that people want to hang out with them, right? And that's, I mean, I guess that's just a blessing, right? With the way that you write, that you're able to create people like that.
Well, it's totally premeditated. I just cannot stand. I shouldn't say cannot stand, but today it's like you're considered a great writer and a literary writer if all your characters are just tragic and riven with angst and misery and pain. They're drug addicts. They have syphilis. Their loved one is dying of cancer. Their parents were wiped out by a serial killer, and they've got to go to work solving a crime. but they're also alcoholics. I mean, or there's just all so unlikable. I don't get escape. I don't get entertainment from reading about people who are more miserable than I am. Oh, okay. Well, this person's in much worse shape than I am. What brings tears to my eyes and what really touches me are the emails I get from readers who say, my mom died. I was, mourning, but I could read your monk novel, or I could read your Janet Evanovich novel, or I could read um, Fox. I mean, I could read Eve Ronin, and I forgot about it. I laughed. I had a good time. I read your books when I'm having chemotherapy, or when people tell me that they are able to forget their pain and the stress in their lives and have an escape reading my books. I don't think I can get a better compliment. And that doesn't mean I'm trying to write popcorn. You know, I still want to engage readers and scare them or hurt them, but I want it to be a pleasurable experience. I don't want them to like have to grimace. I have horrible murders, but they aren't graphic and grotesque. I imply it. Um, I read. I write books that I would like to read. You know,
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I thought with this book, I I liked the pacing of it. I liked that we got to see, I thought more of Walker, although maybe just my imagination, but I felt like we spent a little more time with Walker than we did in Malibu Burning.
well,
Um,
all the Sharpe and Walker stories are from Walker's point of view, and all the Eve Ronin books are from Eve Ronin's point of view. In Malibu Burning, it was from Walker's point of view and Danny Cole's point of view. And in Hidden in Smoke, it's also from Walker's point of view and Danny Cole's point of view.
yeah, but I felt like we were spent more time with Walker this time than we did in Malibu Burning. I don't know
I
why I
don't know.
feel that way.
I don't know.
Um,
Well, I think you'll be when you do read Ashes Never Lie. I think you'll be surprised how large a role Eve Ronin has and Walker's wife, and it shows much more of Walker's family life than either Malibu Burning or Hidden in Smoke do.
yeah, and with the son, in the, sort of plays a motivating role, I'll say. But yeah, I mean, I know that it's, I know like how it's written from his point of view, but I just didn't feel like um maybe because like the other characters are more focused, right? In this one you have like a serial arsonist, um, and that's probably a good example. Like in some of your books, you were so engrossed in like other people, and I felt like I got to know Walker better. Maybe that's a
Mhm.
better way of putting it. Like I felt like this wasn't just about him telling us about other people. Like I felt like I got to know him better than I had before.
Yeah. Well, in the previous book, Ashes Never Lie, um, Walker, in a sense, brings his wife into his investigation so she understands why he does what he does, why he's so into the risk. So she understands the adrenaline rush he gets from it. Um, and it works and it doesn't work. And I reference even the opening pages of Hidden in Smoke, all the scars that are now on Walker's back, and he makes a joke about it, but those are scars that are from the previous book. So my characters literally carry the scars from what they went through before. And I think the reason you may feel that Walker has a bigger role in this book is because unlike Malibu Burning, where you had this con man who was committing this massive heist amidst the biggest wildfire in California history, which he instigates, in this book, what Danny is doing, he's doing for Walker. So even if Walker isn't there, it's about Walker in a sense. And so the whole book is about Walker and what is important to him and what he's willing to risk to do what he needs to do.
Yeah, I guess that's what it was. I just had this feel like when I got down to the end of the book, I was like, I felt like I knew Walker better. I felt like I had spent more time with Walker than I had in the first book. And I liked that. I mean, I liked him more in this book than I did the first book.
Well, you may even like it more when you read the second. It's like an evolution. Well, if tomorrow my publisher comes to me, and it's quite possible they will, I'll turn in my new book July 1st, and I owe them another book, and I'll ask them, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to do another Eve Ronin? You want me to do another Sharpe and Walker? You want me to do a standalone? You want me to do a sequel to the book you just got? I suspect they may tell me to do another Sharpe and Walker. At this moment, I could not tell you what that would be, but I can tell you how I'll start figuring it out, and that'll be what situation can I put Sharpe and Walker in that will show us new aspects of their character, that will show me new aspects of their character, that will put them at risk in a different way,
I
that will
love that.
force them to come up with a new understanding for themselves. So I always start my books, with the exception of Malibu Burning, I start all my books with a character, and then what do I want to put that character through? And then I come up with a mystery or a crime or whatever that will be the tool for me to do that. In Malibu Burning, I had the idea for the crime, and then I said, all right, who are the characters? They're going to populate this crime, and then how do I make the crime an integral part of who they are and what they're doing? I kind of reverse engineered my usual way of plotting. But for each Eve Ronin novel, I start with, what do I want to do to Eve now? How do I want her to grow? What do I want her to learn? What mistake do I want her to make? 'Cause I always want her to make a big mistake because she's not a perfect cop. She's far from it. And I think that humanizes her. And what do I want to bring out of her relationship with Duncan? Although Duncan doesn't change much, his life changes a bit along the way. And because he was supposed to retire quite a while ago, and he's still in the job. So I start from character first, always.
You know what I'm curious about? How are you so good at creating villains that are unlikable?
My wife, who's French, I've done this accent for you before. She says, "I don't know what it is, these characters you come up with, they're inside of you, and it makes me very, very scared." You should read these creeps, in my books and TV shows. Just, they're in you, they're part of you. What's that say about you? And the other thing she says is, if I die before my husband, I don't care if I'm hit by a meteor or a bus. I want a complete investigation. Because he spends his days coming up with perfect murders. Yeah. So, but it's true. I mean, it reminds me of years ago. Remember the TV show Barney Miller?
I do.
I interviewed the guy who created Barney Miller and wrote all the episodes and rewrote all the episodes that he didn't write. And he said, "You want to know what the secret of Barney Miller is?" And I said, "What's that?" And he says, "Doesn't matter who comes in the squad room, whether it's the Pope, a Hispanic gang member, a Chinese restaurateur, they're all Jews."
Okay.
They're all Jews. And you look at it that way, that's all Jewish humor. they're all Jews. But it's funny, but they're all aspects of him. If you look at Seinfeld, I mean, every character is an aspect of Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld. They're same neuroses. So I guess to some degree, the characters I write are aspects of me. I mean, maybe Danny Cole is who I aspire to be. I aspire to look that good in a suit, to be that self-confident and charming and all that. And Eve Ronin is essentially me when I was younger, and I like Eve, I came from a single parent household and was trying to bring order to chaos, and I was 40 when I was 18. So Eve Ronin's mom is very much my mom, my late mother. Yeah, and in Sharpe and Walker, I don't know how they're me, but well, I guess they are in some ways. Like, for instance, Walker gave up being a U.S. Marshal and became an arson investigator for the sake of his family. Well, I was very, very active in television. And when our daughter went off to college, my wife said, if you keep doing what you're doing, I'm never going to see you. My daughter's off to college. You're going to be at work. I'll be in an empty house. I'll be a widow. Can we live just off your novels? And so I willingly left television for the most part and concentrated on being a novelist for the sake of my marriage, while at the same time I was yearning to be back in the writer's room. Loved television, but it wasn't a huge sacrifice. I love being with my wife. I love the freedom of not having to go into an office every day and live by the schedule of a television show. But in that way, I think that Walker reflects me and the sacrifice I made, so I can understand him a little bit. And as far as Sharpe goes, he loves the solving a mystery. Well, I love crafting a mystery. I love the clues. I love the machinery of it. And in fact, the book I'm doing now is very much my attempt to do Columbo or Monk or Sherlock Holmes. It's a very, I mean, or Poker Face. It is, or Elsbeth. It is a whodunit. It is a eccentric, colorful detective and his assistant solving impossible murders. Because I love that. I love the the magic trick of it. And then maybe this whole need to establish order again is from my own messed up childhood. But I guess all these characters are aspects of me, and like everybody, I probably have a dark side, evil things I'd like to do, twisted parts of my personality that I can exercise by writing books about these characters. Instead, I wouldn't rob a bank or beat somebody up or do some of these horrible things, but I can imagine it through my characters, I suppose. I guess
I'm
these books
okay
saved
with
me from psychoanalysis.
I'm okay with Danny, right? I'm okay with the bank robbing, the heist aspect of Danny, even though, fundamentally I know it's the bad thing. Right? But I mean, I really do enjoy a good heist. And I think everybody does, right? Everybody likes the like Ocean's 11, right? Everyone likes that really well thought out plan that comes together. And especially for one reason or another, if you're stealing from or plotting around a very bad person, right? It gives people even more, they're rooting even more for that, and for that bad guy.
But that was the
Um,
thing about Malibu Burning is Danny was going after bad people, but putting a lot of innocent people at risk.
hmm,
He was creating this massive wildfire that he thought he could control, and he couldn't.
yeah.
And he paid the price for it. I mean, a lot of no innocent people were injured or killed, but they could have been. And it was an outrageous risk that he took. And at the end of Malibu Burning, he says, "That's it. I'm done. I retire. I'm not doing that again." And so he's not quite Nicholas Fox. And Danny Cole, has some faults. And unlike Nicholas Fox, Danny Cole went to prison. Danny Cole got
Yeah.
caught. Um, and he found another vocation while he was in prison, not one that he wanted to get, but so it's yes, I write about bad people, but like my brother Todd, who's a New York Times bestselling novelist, likes to say, he writes about people, bad people doing bad things. And no matter what I'm writing about, I tend to write about heroes, good people. And it's true.
Fair.
I think even my bad guys, like Danny Cole, end up being good, essentially good.
Yeah, but they're not the ones. He's not the one I mean. I mean, like your true bad guy. Every book you write has the creepy dude,
Yeah.
right? And I think you're just very good at writing the creepy dude. Three cheers for the audio book. I forget who did the audio, the
Eric
male
Conger, he's
audio.
fantastic.
Yeah, was so good. The creepy guy, he did the perfect voice for the creepy guy, and it was creepy.
I
Re-
absolutely love Eric Conger. I've wanted him to be narrating my books for years. I finally got him for Malibu Burning. I was so happy. And he's done now all the Sharpe Walkers. I begged Audible, when we do Ashes Never Lie, bring Nicole Zanzarella in to do Eve Ronin because the Eve Ronin readers will appreciate it in the same way that Michael Connelly's readers appreciate Titus Welliver doing Bosch in the Irene Ballard books or in the Lincoln Lawyer books. And it makes it feel like a radio play. And Nicole came in, and Eric and Nicole were in the same studio together narrating their scenes, or narrating, but performing their scenes. So the chemistry was real. They were right there. And they did it again in Hidden in Smoke. And Eric's going to come back for Fallen Star to do Sharpe and Walker. So to me, that's great. And Eric, he just gets my humor. I mean, I've had a lot of great narrators in my books, but Eric, for whatever reason, just plays the stuff the way I write it. I mean, the way I feel it. And he has this tone that he sets in his performance. I discovered him. He read the Virgil Flowers books that John Sanford wrote, and I
oh,
just loved his reading. And when Sanford combined the Virgil Flowers books with his Lucas Davenport books, somebody else was reading or performing Virgil Flowers, and I hate that guy's
I hate that too.
interpretation
I
of.
hate when you have a character that and they pop up someplace else because I've done that's true of a lot of books right? Oftentimes authors will write a book about whoever the main characters are, and then like wind up doing a sequel that focuses more on their friends or like people who weren't, at the center, of the first story, and it moves a little, and then like the main characters of the first book aren't played or voiced by the same people in the next book. So like it can create a completely different vibe. It changes it. I don't prefer that either. I prefer the consistency.
I
Uh,
agree with you.
and I find that now that I'm getting older, I always read maybe two, three books a week. It's much harder to do when you have a lot of like responsibility and a lot of things going on. It's much harder to read everything.
I still buy books as if I still read two or three a week. I haven't read two or three a week in years, but I still buy as if, oh, I gotta keep the supply going. I'll run out. And I mean, I could stop buying books today and be able to read two or three books a week for years without a problem. I don't know
Well,
why I
that's what
keep buying
happens.
books.
Like it sort of becomes our crack, right? I mean, like you gotta have the books.
Yeah, I tell my wife there's worse addictions. I could be a sex addict, a drug addict, a gambling addict. Books, at least, are something you can sell when I'm gone. Something, except they kind of move through the house like weeds. I mean, you can't see because the picture I'm showing you here is orderly, but if you look these two directions, it's books, 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 books.
So for me, I mean, I still will read a book, I still am averaging more like a book a week, of the real book you hold in your hand. But now with audiobooks, my goodness, I'm in love, right? Because I play the books and I'm like chopping vegetables and I'm doing other things around and I'm like listening as I'm buzzing about.
Oh, it makes traffic in LA a joy to be able to listen to books.
Oh yeah.
And I have a big drive I have to take tomorrow, and so I'm looking forward to the 5 hours on the road of just listening to this book. Every morning I take a 2 mile walk, and I listen to books while I walk. So I feel like I'm really accomplishing something. It's the only way I can really find time to read now with my schedule. And I spend so much time reading books. I can't show you now because I have to turn the. But I've got easily 50 books here about design and how design affects behavior as research for my Edison Bixby books. Um, and I need to find the time to read those when I'm researching. And when I'm writing the arson books, I have to read all those books about arson. So it's very time consuming. I don't have time to read fiction the way I'd like to.
I mean, between research and then write, I mean, you're one of those authors that goes to the computer pretty much daily, I think, to write. I mean, you set aside time every day, that is your writing time, and
Well, you say that I set aside time to write this, my writing time, but that's not true. It's my job. So if I'm going to pay the mortgage, if I'm going to pay my daughter's tuition, if I'm going to have the lights on here, I must sit down every day to work. And the same way that everybody else in America has to sit down or go to work. So for me, it's not like finding the time to write. It's more like finding the time to have a life because I have to write in order to survive. I mean, and that's the other thing. I can't just write when I feel in the mood when I have my perfect slippers on and my perfect drink and the perfect music. I have deadlines. If I don't deliver a book on a certain date, there's serious problems. And I can't give you the details now, but I'm working on a TV series now. And if that script isn't on the stage on Monday, there's nothing to shoot. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars that goes down the toilet. If we have to shut down because the script isn't there. So you have people who rely on you to turn this stuff out. So for me, it's a job.
do you ever find that you write in a mood? Like, are you ever like just in a bad mood? You're like, I don't care about what happens to Eve Ronin today. She sucks as far as I'm concerned. I'm in a very bad mood. And then like have to sit down and write about her.
No, it's a different situation. Sometimes I have to write when I'm in a bad mood or I'm not feeling well or I'm tired. And what happens then is I just write crap or the writing just doesn't get where I need it to be. Like I wrote some stuff last night. I looked at it today and I thought, my God, what the hell was I thinking? I need to rewrite it. So in general, when I'm not on a TV show, I do my best writing between 8 p.m., 7, 8 p.m., and 1 or 2 in the morning. I mean, it's just the perfect time for me to write. And then I usually get up in a perfect world around 10 a.m., have breakfast, take my walk, and then I spend most of the day rewriting what I did the night before and doing the business of writing, like doing this interview with you, talking to agents, doing marketing, whatever, reading the copy edits on my previous book, all the stuff I have to do to keep the lights on, to keep the business rolling. And then I have dinner and I sit down and I write fresh. Now, when I'm working on a script, that's different. There's a real ticking clock on that. It has to be done by a certain time, and then it's like that's all I concentrate on is the script. I work on it all day, all night until the script is done, and then I
Well,
get back to my
scripts are a
phone.
lot more collaborative, though, right? I mean,
Well,
usually
the
there's more than one writer, and then there's, a lot of having to clear what the story is going to be, right?
well, when you write a script in a TV series, it depends if you're the showrunner or not. If you're the one in charge of the show. The show I'm working on right now, I'm not the showrunner. I guess you'd say I'm number two. But it's someone with whom I've worked with a long time. And you go and you have ideas for stories. The showrunner likes it or doesn't, and then you break out the broad strokes of the story, and then you have to get it approved by the studio and the network. And if the studio and the network like the idea, then you do what's called a beat sheet or an outline, and it's all the scenes and major moves of the plot. And you send that in, and you get notes from the studio and the network. And when that gets approved, that outline goes to all the department heads, and they start prepping the show off of your outline. They start building sets, finding locations, getting wardrobe, casting, all that stuff, budgeting, scheduling off of your outline. So what you write has to match that outline. You can deviate a little bit around the edges, but you can't really deviate much because a lot of work is being done while you're writing. And then that script is not a collaborative effort. You're writing it on your own,
Yeah.
and then you deliver it, and the showrunner might do a rewrite or someone else on staff, or you, and you'll get notes. You'll get notes from everybody. You'll get notes from the actors. You'll get notes from what we call the line producers, the people involved in the physical production of the show. The people who have to make what you made up actually real in the real world. They have to film it on the streets and in sound stages. And you'll get notes from the network, and you get lots of notes. Um, and then production realities will change things. If you have things outside and it's a sunny day in your mind, but in reality it's pouring rain when they do the shooting, you've got to change everything. Or an actor breaks his leg and you've got to bring in, cut that actor's part down. I mean, there's a million things that go wrong while you're shooting an episode, and you have to adjust for it. Um, that's different than a book. Obviously, in a book, I don't have all those voices telling me what I have to do. I don't have the constriction of X many days of production, and this is what we're going to spend, and here are the actors, and they have to have so many lines and so many scenes, and you have this piece of being the writer, director, the star. You're everybody yourself, but it's also very lonely. I like being in a writer's room and having
Mm.
other writers challenge me and bring out, I can be lazy sometimes, and other writers force me out of my own cliches and my own, easy fallbacks. So, I miss that. And there's a community involved in television, but I can write a script a lot faster than I can write a novel. Um,
For sure, right? It's very different. And
but
it
I've
is shorter and there's not as much description. I mean, with books, you really you're weaving the imagery, and that's not easy.
no, but I've found that television has made me a better novelist. I've started, when did I start doing this? I guess it was my book, True Fiction. It was either True Fiction or Lost Hills. I have this idea for a story. I know what I want to do. So I write it as a script first. Not a script anybody's ever going to see, just me. I get it out of my system as a script. And I can do that in about 2 weeks. Get the whole book out as a script. And in a script, everything moves forward by action and dialogue. If you don't see it or hear it, it doesn't happen. And also in television, you have a rhythm. You have act breaks, and it forces me to be leaner in my writing. Now, in my scripts, I'll say, description of house here or introspection here, but I don't do it. I just do the action and dialogue. And I think that gives my books then an energy and a pace that's much like television or film.
Mhm.
And then because I have the script, it becomes an extraordinarily detailed outline. So then when I like here, I give you a taste. This is the script version of the book I'm writing now. This is my book, Edison Bixby, and you can see it's script pages. And I go through and I basically novelize my screenplay. But I'm not thinking of plot anymore. I know the plot works. I know the dialogue works. I'm coloring between the lines. I'm exploring character. I can relax a bit. The story's out of my system. I've also written this.
Wow.
I've written a script version of a book and then realized, oh, it doesn't work, and I can fix it then. It's harder to fix in prose, but once I've written the script, I've now found almost like I can't dance and I can't sing, but I can feel the beat of a story. I can tell, okay, I found the beat. The dialogue works. I got the energy of the scenes, and then I rewrite. I mean, I'm not. It's not the Holy Bible, my script, but the super hard work is done, and it makes writing the book a lot easier. A lot of the stress is gone because I know the story and how it's going to end, and I know I've already got the characters there. And now I'm refining, I'm smoothing the edges, and it doesn't mean I don't change things, um, but starting to, and also I want my books to mimic, in a sense, the experience of watching a TV show. You
Mm.
get lost inside of it, and I think some writers are so in love with their own voice and so in love with their ability to craft a phrase that it can pull you out and make you realize, oh, I'm reading a book. I don't want my readers to think about they're reading a book. I want them to get so lost in their reading that they don't really pay much attention to the words on the page anymore. If they're pulled
Yeah.
out by a clever description I have of a building or a tree or someone's nose, then I've kind of failed. But if I can put those clever things in the mouths of my characters, then I don't ruin the illusion. I don't break the dream. Um,
Now, I love this tidbit about you. I love that you write the scripts before in some of your cases, like before you actually put it to the, well, it makes perfect sense though, right? It gives you it's no different than outlining.
Well, I outline too. My outlines are more like bullet points. And I think it's especially necessary in the book I'm writing now, which is a whodunit. I want my whodunits to be fairly clued. So I know what the clues are and how I want to misdirect you, and how I want to fool you and what the red herrings are. But I know who done it. I know how my detective is going to figure it out. But it's even true in the Eve Ronins or Sharpe and Walkers. I mean, I know in the Sharpe and Walker how the arson case is going to be resolved. I know how the heist is going to be pulled off, and I know what the beats are that I want that I have to follow, character beats and plot beats. I have those outlines. They're not thick, but I have them here. It doesn't mean I don't change. My outlines, how do I explain it? I'll have maybe the script version I'm writing as I'm writing it here. I'll have the outline over here, and as I'm writing, I'll deviate from my outline, and then I'll have to revise my outline. So I usually finish my outline about a week or so before I finish my books. As I'll have the outline, and in a sense, my script is a larger version of the outline. But as I'm going, I'm making changes. There are characters I thought would only be in one scene, and now they're throughout the entire book. There's some side character I thought I'd kill, but the character's still alive, damn it. It changes. Like, Duncan was never supposed to be in all these Eve Ronin novels. He was supposed to retire. I think in like the second book. I mean, my plan was to keep giving her different partners, and not have Duncan around. But Duncan became such a big part of her life, and the readers wanted Duncan so badly, and my publisher wanted Duncan so badly, I couldn't get rid of him. I had to
Well,
bring him.
that's the part that I think I was trying to talk about earlier, right? You create characters that are consistently the same that people grow attached to, right? I mean, that's the Stephanie Plum, right? I mean, that's the
Right.
Duncan to me is the, you can rely on him to be the same. He's always hungry. He's always calm. And she couldn't be with somebody else almost like because she needs that balance to her.
Uh-huh. So
And
I am. Go ahead.
I think that's why, like, people like Duncan, and people would there'd be an uprising, right? If you get rid of Duncan because of that, people like that to have some reliable people in their story. Like, oh, Duncan's always going to be Duncan, right? Eve's always going to be doing this, but Duncan's always going to be Duncan.
It's why you want Hawk in a Spenser novel. Though I would like to get rid of Susan, but otherwise, I mean, you want Hawk in a Spenser novel. It's the other side of Spenser's personality. He wouldn't be Spenser without Hawk. You want Butch and Sundance. You want that pairing. But there are some characters who outlive their usefulness, who just become grating. if I can't stand in the Spencers. Oh, Spenser, you're so noble, you're so wonderful. I mean, Susan Soberman is just there to tell Spenser how noble and great he is, and I hate it. Just
I
hate it.
haven't read one of them in a very long time.
Well, yeah, Nero Wolfe. You want Nero Wolfe, you want Archie. You want those contrasts, and they're important. But I think it'd be fun for a while anyway to have Eve paired up with someone who isn't keeping her in balance, who's
That
making her worse, that could be. I mean, that's not like Dickon wouldn't be
could
around,
be
but
fun too, to have her pair up with somebody crazier than her.
who just hates her guts, who doesn't like her crap. 'Cause in the Eve Ronin novels, there's a TV show that's running at the same time about her, that's idealizing her and making her larger than life, and she's got to live up to that ridiculous image, and it's infecting her life, her job, and that's fun to have to compete with an idealized version of yourself. Um, I'm always looking for those things that will make the books more fun. They'll bring out more humor and more drama.
Well, you hit a home run.
Well, thank
I
you.
really, really liked Hidden in Smoke. I mean, I had the audiobook, and went right through it, and within like 2 days, the book was done. And really, really enjoyed it. It's just a good story. And the characters came together. Just like I said, the audiobook's great. The readers really voiced it well. You won't be disappointed. And I put my vote out there. If your publisher's listening, I love Danny Cole. I would love to see Danny show up in his own series. That's what we need.
I
I
don't
think
know.
you
I
need a new
think
chick for Danny. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna
uh,
put it out there. You need a new chick for him.
putting yourself in there.
No, no. But I mean, you need somebody more Kate-like.
Yeah. Well, I
Like
don't
I
want to do
didn't.
Fox and O'Hare over again. I've done that, so I've got to do something else. But um,
Well, maybe a con woman like him.
there is a sense though that for some reason heist novels skew old, and that the word heist. Like, I wanted the book to be called not Hidden in Smoke, but Fire and Heist. I just thought that was a great title, or A Song of Fire and Heist. Get myself sued by George Martin. I but they said no, we can't have the word heist in there. Heist is a bad word. So okay.
I don't agree. I think Danny's just a great character. He's super interesting, very suave. I just if you like which I do, if you like those Ocean 11 type stories, you're gonna like Danny. And I
Yeah.
found myself wishing there was more even of Danny. Like in other words, I would love to read a novel that's just Danny. Um, the girlfriend I'm okay with, but I just said
Oh, she's not a girlfriend. She's just,
a playmate,
a friend with benefits.
a friend with benefits.
They aren't in love. I mean, she's known him since she was in college when he was stealing the answers to law school questions for her. But she's very clear. I will not sleep with a felon. She wouldn't come visit him on I don't know what you call those. What do you call it when you're in prison and someone can come and sleep with you, a wife or a girlfriend?
Conjugal visit.
Yeah, she wouldn't do conjugal visits with him when he was in, because she doesn't, it would be bad for her image. And she makes it very clear in this book that if you're arrested for whatever you're doing, this time I'm not going to be there for you. I'm not going to represent you. Um, and I don't think she's the only person he sleeps with. I think he sleeps with a lot of other, well, not recently, but in his past, a lot of other people. The only women he won't sleep with are women in his crew. He thinks that really distracts you when you're on a heist or a robbery or whatever, or a con, if you are sleeping with somebody, in the crew. And he won't sleep with somebody that he's taking down. But I don't think relationships are for him. In that regard, he's much more like Simon Templar, a lovable rogue, who respects women, who enjoys women, um, who doesn't see them as playthings, they're sex toys, but he's not ready to get into a long-term
Yeah.
relationship. I think he genuinely cares for Karen. I think he really, you know, respects her and would never do anything to hurt her. But I don't think he would, if it was a choice between him and she wanted to go marry some guy, he wouldn't say marry me. He'd say good luck.
I agree. But if your publisher's listening, I think I would personally love it, and I think that
Did you read my Ian Ludlow novels about the author Ian Ludlow, whose fictional books start coming true, and he has to become the action hero he writes about, and he's essentially on the run with his book publicist, this woman named Margot French, who's a lesbian, and so there's no will they won't they involved there, and it was so nice to write a man and a woman in a difficult situation where there is zero sexual tension. It's just none. And in fact, where they both are pursuing the same woman at one point. It's like it's so unfair that she got her. It's like, it's just
it's good
hard
stuff.
enough for me to get women without having to compete with women. He was like always. I loved it. I mean, my goal back then was to you know move between the police procedurals of Eve Ronin and the Ian Ludlow books. But as it worked out, I was doing Eve Ronin and Sharpe Walker. I may go back to the Ian Ludlows at some point. I miss him too.
You create characters that are with us always.
And there's a crossover. The executive producer of the Eve Ronin novels is in the offices where Ian Ludlow once worked as a TV writer. And her dad and Eve Ronin's dad directed episodes of the show that that Ian Ludlow used to write. I mean, I cross it over, and I'm very tempted. I haven't decided whether I'll do it or not yet. There's a possibility in the book I'm writing now I could have Eve Ronin show up, and I'm trying to decide: do I do it? Do I do it? Uh, but I like having an interconnected universe. It's
I
fun.
like it too. It's kind of like with the comic books, right? Everybody likes when, Superman shows up in a Batman comic book.
Well, Stephen King has done it. Michael Connelly certainly does it. John Sanford does it.
You
It's
also
nice.
give a thrill to your fans, right? I mean, because I think everyone has a favorite, right, amongst characters, especially if they're loyal to, a particular author and they read a lot of their stuff. And I think that's a real shout out to your fans. That's what you're really doing. You're saying, like, as soon as Eve came into the book, I didn't know to expect her. And as soon as she popped in, I was just like, yay, Eve, give me a
If I
phone,
look at the
Eve.
reader and critic reviews, they all say the same thing, that they were thrilled when Eve Ronin showed up. I hope they say the same thing in the Eve Ronin novel when Sharpe and Walker show up and don't go, oh God, Sharpe and Walker are back. I hope they say the same thing, that it's fun to see them back in. But, I always love it when the Lincoln Lawyer or, Harry Bosch show up in an Irene Ballard novel or vice. I mean, I like those interconnections. It's fun.
Well, you do a great job. You
Thank
know,
you.
I have to let you go because I'm always over schedule with you. Um, I
It's because I won't
love
shut up.
no, it's that I enjoy talking to you so much that I just never want to stop talking, and I love your writing, so there's just an endless funnel of material to go over. Um,
Thank you.
Again, I hope that you'll come back as you continue to write. I love talking about the latest, edition of
Well, the
everything.
next time I see you, I guess will be for Fallen Star, which is
I
the
can't.
Eve Ronin book that comes out. When does it come out? October 14th.
I'm going to be counting the days and big X's on my
And at
calendar.
least for now, the book we've been talking about, Hidden in Smoke, out right now.
A great read, a
Thank you.
truly great read. There's so much going on in this book, and if it's a standalone, I think, even if you didn't read Malibu Burning, if you should go back and read it anyway. I mean, I've spoiled so much of this on you already, but it's definitely worth the read, even if you've gone through this whole podcast with me, because you get to see the backstory anyway, and there's nothing like going through it in person and just hearing little bits and pieces of us talking. And you know what? It wouldn't hurt if you just started a whole writing campaign to his publisher. Go, Danny. Go, Danny. Join me in my quest.
Hey, I don't know what my next book is going to be. It could be another Denny. Who knows? I don't know yet.
Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. My
And
pleasure.
at that, I'm going to close the podcast. So thank you.
Oh, sure.